Hello from Race Control in Alicante here for the Volvo Ocean Race. Once again, we've got our special guest, Annie Lush and T. Brunel. Thank you so much for sticking around for another day.
Thanks. Good to see how the inside works again.
Well, you have got a chance to put some more questions to Annie, so if you haven't done already, get some thoughts in the comments below and we will be taking your questions and giving you the answers at the end of the show. First of all, I need to say the competition for the Garmin Verb 360 camera has finished. The entry date has finished. It was midnight yesterday, so stop entering the competition. There is no point putting in your guess. Well, I mean, you could have a go, but you're not going to win anything anyway. We're going to keep an eye on the boat and we will let you know who it is that crosses the equator first and who the lucky winner is. And we've got a little bit of something different today coming up in the show. Annie here, just before we came on air, we actually, normally I or Conrad or somebody else does the live chats of the boat. Instead, we thought it'd be nice to hear two teammates talking. So a little bit of a twist, that will be coming up later. Plus, we're going to have Conrad Coleman going through what the doldrums look like this time and what the tricky obstacles are laying ahead. Plus, a little bit of a look behind the scenes as to how it is we get the images off the boat. I mean, all of you who have been following the race will have seen the fantastic photos that we've been getting off the boats. Plus all the amazing videos that keep coming in daily. And behind every single one of these moments is an onboard reporter. Jan Ryu, that's on board with Team Brunel at the moment right now, he sent in this little bit of a glimpse as to how it is he gets some of those fantastic images. Well, wet and wild out in the water at the moment. And Annie, I've got to ask, as a sailor, I mean, these onboard reporters, they're there. Is it weird to be with them 24 hours a day, documenting your every move?
Well, sometimes you're actually quite envious of them because they're not actually in the watch system. So, you know, they can choose when they sleep. But other times, I'm not envious at all. They're trying to keep camera equipment working, which is wet, humid, and it doesn't work very well, so they're always having some sort of nightmare trying to talk to you guys actually on LiveX, and they can help us out a little bit.
Well, because it's interesting you mentioned that, because I remember seeing the Southern Ocean leg when, if you've seen that footage, it was so cold. I mean, it was absolutely freezing conditions. And the OBRs, the onboard reporters, are not allowed to help out with sailing the boats. They couldn't do anything to warm themselves up.
Yeah, I know that Martin particularly finds it hard. He is a sailor, and he finds it really hard that he can't help us. But yeah, it's cold inside the boat as well. But they do help, you know, make the odd cup of tea, or Ugo on that Southern Ocean leg, when I was injured, he had to help me across the boat when we were driving, so I couldn't have done without him.
Oh, there we go. All right, well, we are going to continue to bring all the stories and the images that the onboard reporters bring us for that close-up personal look at the sailors. But for the overview, let's take a look at the tracker and see how the race is unfolding right now. If you've been following it over the last few days, you'll know it's just a drag race, and Team Axe and Abel have been doing very well, positioning themselves out in front ahead of overall race leader Mafre. Team Brunel were the boat that was leading out of Hong Kong, and earlier on today we linked up Annie Lush in the studio with Carl Lanford on board to hear what's going on.
Hi Kyle, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can, gotcha.
How are you doing?
Yeah, not bad. Yourself?
Have I got you out of your bunk?
Nah, thankfully you got me off deck, which is perfect.
Nice. Who are you on deck with?
Bauer, Carlo, and Albie.
And how's Albie doing? How's he handling the food this trip so far?
No, he's actually all right. He's dealing with it. There seems to be some like next level jerky that we've got on board, which has kept morale up.
Nice. I'm glad to hear it. And there's enough. Glad to hear it.
We ran out of toilet bags today.
Oh,
so
that's
tough.
Very early. What about the outside toilet?
Yeah, well, that was kind of out of action. It was like 25 knots and just reaching at 90 true, so it's just heinous.
So what's the plan?
Yeah, no, but it did feature. Well, I just took it on and just got soaked. Out of gear.
And who's been helping Carlo out on the bow?
It's been a group effort on the bow. Albie made one very rare appearance and hasn't featured again. And then Louis and Pete and myself have been taking it on. Sally hasn't really ventured far forward, but we've got time to change that, I think. And of course, Bauer's firmly at the back of the yacht.
How's it going with the new sails?
All good, I think. I think it's better for sure, and I think we're starting to sail the boat a bit better. But
You were near Mapfree for quite a while, right? Did you get some good speed testing in against them?
yeah, well, we kind of held them off. Well, held with them for a long time, and then we just lost a massive amount. We got a big lift, and we kind of took it high and just opened a heap of gauge, and so one sked we lost, I think it was 15 miles, and then kind of been a little bit out of touch with those guys since. But the last sked just came in, and we made a good gain on Axo, I think, and a small gain on Mapfree and Dongfeng, so we're still within a fighting shot, I think.
Nice. And how's Capey doing? Is he happy where your place going into the doldrums now?
He's good. Capey's Capey. I think just new weather as well. So he's just on the computer now, going through it all and running some routes, trying to figure out the best way to poke through. And he kind of just mentioned that it looks like it's going to be the doldrums from the equator all the way to Auckland. So it sounds like it could be pretty heinous and pretty long and slow trip. So we've got to make sure we've maybe start rationing the food.
Oh no, it's going to be tricky. Oh no. And who's making KP's coffee with a bit of chocolate on the top?
No one, actually. The coffee program's been lacking because Carlo's doing the food, and obviously not he's doing a good job, but not at the same level as yourself and Abby. And so we've run out of milk, and no one knows where to find the extra milk.
What does it look like for the rest of today? Is it getting lighter?
Yeah, we just peeled to the J0 from the J1 a few hours ago, which was a horrible peel, like everybody just getting fire hosed on the bow. And then the breeze is just slowly dropping, and we've got a good lift at the moment, so we've kind of got the hammer down.
Full speed ahead for Team Brunel, but just how big is the doldrums going to be? How big an obstacle is it going to cause? Well, we've got Conrad Coleman here, offshore sailor, to help us understand. Conrad, the doldrums all the way from the equator to Auckland?
Sorry, buddy, I'm going to have to be a little bit of a stickler here. Kyle, a little bit of a meteorology lesson. The doldrums are only around the equatorial region, and so... But that doesn't prohibit the fact that it's going to be really complicated all the way to Auckland. Let's have a look. This is where we find the fleet at the moment, and you can see that there's this band of northeasterlies that they're sailing in at the moment. But as we go forward into the doldrums, they're going to dive into this relatively narrow band of blue, and we've got this transition zone from the northeasterlies down into the monsoon westerlies. So they're going to have a lot of convective activity. It's going to get hot. It's going to get sticky. It's definitely going to try their patience, but it's certainly not going to be as bad as it was last time on the way to Hong Kong. However, looking forward, that's when it gets really complicated. Down by the Solomon Islands, in sort of 3 days' time, that is where the real doldrums has been sort of pushed down. And that's been pushed by a confluence of two things. One is the strong band of monsoon westerlies, and the other one is down in the south. There is a tropical cyclone that is sort of sucking all the wind down towards the south. However, moving forward, you can see that on this routing at least, they go down through the Tasman Sea, and then sort of east to Auckland at the final part. However, if we cast our eyes back up towards the equator, you can see the strong band of wind here just underneath the equator. There is a possibility, and we'll see if the fleet goes on it, that the boats go east first and then have to fight their way down through the mess down by Vanuatu on the way to Auckland. So hopefully in 600 miles time, it is possible that we're going to see a split in the fleet, and whether we see the boats coming down this way and then across and then south is going to be really fascinating. It's going to be interesting to see who has the guts to break from the fleet.
All right, thank you very much, Conrad. Now it comes to the part of the show where you get to put your questions to Annie and we get to have the answers. Now, we've got a lot, so Annie, I'm going to hurry you along here because we've got a lot of questions to get through. So Diana Villas asks, your favourite dish on board when you are racing? And this is freeze-dried food.
Chicken noodle.
Just chicken noodle every time?
Every time.
All right, okay. So Derek Lane has asked, for Team Brunel, did the change of mainsail from leg 6 really make that big of a difference with the Team Brunel start in this leg? I mean, obviously you guys were leading pretty solidly out the gates. You actually haven't had a chance to have a look at the new main, but well, Carl Langford just a moment ago, he seemed pretty happy with it.
Yeah, I did speak to Carl and asked him how it was. He said it was okay, and actually we did see the main before we started racing, and there was a little difference between the two mains, but for sure, having a main that hasn't just gone through the Southern Ocean is better than one that has.
Because at this point in the race, I mean, these sails have got a lot of miles put on them.
Yeah, the last race we only had one mainsail, and by the end of the race it was hardly looked like a mainsail anymore. So, yeah, it's good to have a nice leech tension of a new main.
Okay, well, continuing on with some of the things that you discussed there with that live call with Carl Langford on board, Suzas Ozyurt asks, with rationing mentioned, what is the longest unexpected period that the sailors had to stay on board, not being able to get ahead in low wind conditions? So I'm guessing we're talking about rationing there. Have you ever been in a situation where you've ended up going, oh, we're running out a little low on food here?
Not in this race, but in the last edition in 2014-15 with Team SCA, it was actually the first leg, which took us 28 days, and I think most of us had thought it would take something like 24, 25. So I think all the teams ran out of food. We did okay. I think Brunel did starve for the last 2 days. But we were just down to having cereal bars for the last sort of 2 days, which was pretty miserable. I remember Sophie writing out our ration for everyone, and there's a bit of trading going on.
Now, I'm probably going to regret this because we've got a lot of questions, but I just want to ask you a follow-up question on that one. Just before we came on air, you were telling me about how Francesca Klapcic, who's on board Turn the Tide on Plastic, you guys have had a little bit of a swap with your cereal bars.
Yeah, we've got to that point in the race now where everyone's just a little bit fed up with the flavours of freeze-dried and protein bars that they've got. And so actually last minute, just before the boats left from Hong Kong, Francesca and I were running to each other's containers with swapping protein bars. We've all bought enough for the race, but we're just already fed up with them.
All right, okay, going on to the subject of sleeping. Sally Flack asks, hi Annie, good to see your boot is off. Annie is here because of an injury, but things are improving. Do you have a favourite place to sleep on board? I won't ask if you put your PJs on.
But to be honest, Sally, actually wearing merino wool base layer is a little bit like pyjamas, so it's quite good, but they're normally wet. But yeah, favourite place to sleep is definitely in the bunk. I do spend a lot of time not in the bunk. If it's very light, you'll be all the way in the foredeck, and that's just hot and horrible. But I think, yeah, the forward bottom bunk is my favourite position because you get some sort of air coming down the hatch. It does mean you get woken up a lot because people are always coming past you, but it means you sort of know what's going on.
Okay, Tanya Poley asks, how come nobody wears gloves for the rope work and grinding?
Actually, Tanya, you're not the first person to ask that. Many people have asked me that, and you have a point. But if you wear gloves, because it's, especially now when it's hot and humid, sort of over time your hands don't really adapt to pulling the ropes all the time, and then you just end up with blisters all the time. So it's better, if you can, to kind of build up a big layer of skin that hardens and just gets used to it. But our hands look pretty disgusting.
Sounding lovely. Okay, well, sticking with rope work and winches, Matt Hall asks, why do some winches seem to be loaded anti-clockwise on the drum? That's a bit of a technical question, but what's the reason behind it?
Good question, and it still stumps people on board. We have to have arrows on the winches, so you remember. But it's so, because the drums are actually so big, it's the way that the sheets come out of the deck. If they weren't loading opposite ways on each side, especially with the primaries, then you would get an override much more easily in the sheet, which is where one bit of the rope goes over the top of the other and basically locks it, which is not what you want.
Okay, got another question here. This one's from Baris Demirelli. I believe that's correct. Question for Annie. Has she spoken to any of the sailors from Vestas 11th Hour Racing? How are they doing after that tragic accident?
Yeah, I was, actually really pleased to be able to be in Hong Kong and see the team. Obviously, really sad for everybody involved, and I was happy just to be able to give Stacey a hug. But really hard because they can't talk about it, and although they might want to, it's really sensitive, and obviously something really serious has happened. So I think they all just feel terrible about what's happened, and thinking of the families that have been involved.
Okay, right, next question then. Question about bailing here. Lieni Besnard. I'm really sorry if I keep butchering people's names. I have half a theory that people just make up these names just to put me on the spot. Question for Annie Lush. All this bailing you people do below. Nice. Where is all this water coming in? And are you crawling around then with buckets and towels constantly?
Yeah, we are crawling around with buckets and sponges and bailers. It's really, yeah, it's as you imagine. But
where does it come in? Where does the water come in?
You know, it's a water sport. Water comes from everywhere. But no, the biggest thing is, especially from your wet weather gear, you know, everyone comes below off watch and they'll come in through the hatch and they'll be really wet, and then we'll hang it up, and that's the only place we have to dry it. So that's just dripping on the floor all the time. And there's other parts of the boat which, of course, are sealed, and you're constantly on legs trying to spot where the leaks are, so that when you get ashore, you can fix them and hope that the next leg you don't have them. But inevitably, sort of around the mast or where you have anything going through the deck. But most of it comes in through the hatch.
Oh, well, we're sticking on the theme of water then. Len Bose asks, will you comment about the boats, the Volvo Ocean 65 that we're seeing in this edition, and indeed last edition as well? Do the next boats need to be as wet? The boat appears to be dangerous for the crew with that much water flowing over the deck. What's your thoughts on it?
Well, I suppose apt that I'm answering that question, given that I was injured by being hit by a wave. But I think in reality, actually, having sailed the Volvo 70 for quite a while before the last campaign, these boats are a lot safer than they were, certainly with the big cuddy to try and deflect the water, which is why we have that big cuddy. So I'm not much sure other than putting yourself, you know, fully enclosed, there's much else you can do with sailing in big waves. But yeah, it is wet, and a helmet is advisable.
And as you say, it is a water sport. There's a lot of water about. Some of it does get onto the deck. Edward Lee asks here, have you seen whales in the ocean during the race? Well, you take it.
Yes, we have seen whales quite a lot. Of course, it can actually be quite scary because they don't move that fast, so you really, you know, you want to avoid them. But yeah, it's incredible when you see something like that. And there's always a few good moments in a race when someone will spot something quite amazing, and yeah, you feel quite privileged. You know that not many people in the world get to see that.
Even if you haven't done so already, go onto the website or the Facebook page or YouTube or whatever Volvo Ocean Race social media channel that you use and search for whales, because there is some unbelievable drone shots of these things feeding on the surface. Okay, Pedro Piexiero, what are the major differences between doing the Volvo Ocean Race with other girls and on a sort of a mixed team? So all-female team with Team SEA, this time a mixed team. Which one do you prefer, pros and cons?
Do you want the honest answer?
I want the honest answer, honest answer.
So the biggest difference with the boys' team is that they talk about the toilet a lot more.
I don't want the honest answer. I changed my mind.
No, I mean, the biggest difference for us, I think, for the girls in this race being able to be on mixed teams is that we can sail with people with more experience. And because there aren't many girls with much experience, you know, I get to sail with someone who's done the race 7 or 8 times. But I thought the difference would be that I wouldn't need to grind anymore, because obviously there's such these big, strong guys. But it turns out that that is not the case. We're all grinding. And
at the beginning of this edition, we were making, there was a big point about the females, the new rule, incentivizing having female pros on board. But it just seems to have morphed now into, oh, you've got sailors. Some of them happen to be male, some of them happen to be female. Do you feel that, or do you still feel like there is work to do?
No, I think for sure we're just sailors, and that's what we want to be. And, you know, in a way, you would hope there wouldn't be a rule to do that. But I think, you know, it's right that Volvo did that, and it's great they did that. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. So that perhaps shows that there is still work to be done, because I'm not sure if there isn't a rule in the next race if you'll see as many women. So I think that'll be the telltale sign.
Okay, all right. Moving on to a question about sails now. Marcus Andenfelt asks, is pure boat speed the reason why the A3 is so rarely used? Apparent wind coming from too far forward.
You're sort of right there, Marcus. I mean, a lot of the time you don't want to sail VMG offshore. We actually call it VMC sailing, which basically just means you're trying to go fast approximately north rather than sailing towards a point or south or wherever you're going. So generally you're just sort of sending it rather than trying to sail to an exact point, and therefore you're sailing fast. So yes, you want a flatter sail. But so far also, we're looking at the crossovers between the masthead 0 and the A3, and generally the masthead 0 is winning.
Another question then about sails. We've got Brendan McCleary asking, because we were just talking a minute ago about the mainsail and Team Brunel having changed their mainsail. Brendan asks, so it's 2 mains for the whole season, and you can pick which one to use at the start of each leg? Is that right?
No, you can only do a set number of swaps with your sails. So actually, it's quite strategic on how you plan when you swap your sails. So you can't just swap every leg.
You don't just get to choose. You have to put in some sort of thought to it.
You also need to ship these over 100 kilo sails around the world and plan where you're going to put them on the boat. So there's actually quite a big logistical feat in this as well, because we're not carrying all the spare sails on board. We only take 1 mainsail with us. So that other mainsail, you need to know where you want it.
I mean, these sails, they are built to go the distance. I mean, this is heavy sails. When you talk about, we see video of you guys lumbering these big, heavy bits of cloth around, and I think, well, I can lift up the jib on my, my 470 without too much bother. But these are big and heavily built.
Yeah, I mean, they're very heavily built. They're designed to go around the world. And the thing that's quite hard to get your head around when I first started sailing this boat is that a sail like the Masthead Zero, which is your light wind sail, and you're going to put that up in 3 knots, is also maybe your best sail in 28 knots at 135 true. So the sails, all of the sails can be used in any wind strength, pretty much. So that's quite rare.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, now we're coming to a problem that unfortunately isn't that rare. Christopher Camaggio asks about morale, the navigators, the skippers. So what's morale on the boat like, having gone from front to the back? What sort of things can the skipper do to maintain morale in that type of situation? And it was interesting because yesterday when you were on the show, you were talking about Andrew Cape, the navigator of Team Brunel, and Bauerbecking, the skipper, not really sort of showing much sort of grumpiness, but you must have had highs, you must have had lows.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, it's hard when you get a bad sked, so you get a position report after 6 hours, and particularly if that 6 hours you can't see any other boats and you think that you've been going really fast and you've been pushing really hard, and then you find out that you were one of the slower boats in the fleet, and that's really disappointing. Or you find out that everyone else has jibed and you've made a massive loss. And I think it's very hard for the navigator to have to come and tell someone when it's that. But something I had to learn, certainly in the last race, coming from inshore sailing, is that it is a long race and the legs are long. And, sometimes there's going to be opportunities to make these gains back. So you basically just got to focus on how to keep going.
Have you ever been in the situation where you've been on deck, been working really hard for 6 hours, and somebody comes to give you some news, it's bad news, and you think, oh, don't tell me like that, sugarcoat it, please?
Often Bauer will come and say, do you want to hear the good news or the bad news?
And you know straight away. Okay, fair enough. Right, we've got another question here. This one, following up from the mainsail. Jonathan Ross has been listening, and he asks, how many other boats have changed mains so far? I mean, I don't know whether you'd know all of that, really. I mean, how public is it when you change a main?
Yeah, you just need to watch the other boats. But to be honest, I'm actually not sure because I haven't been on the last leg and a half, which is when the swaps would have started happening. So I can't tell you. But yeah, you can keep an eye out.
Yeah, okay. And we've got getting some more questions here about your injury. So just give us a little bit of an update here. You're on the shore now. Recovery's going well.
Yeah, recovery's going well. I saw some great physios in Auckland, and the bones have, luckily none of the fractures displaced, which means that the bones are just gluing together. And now I'm just really trying to get used to using everything again. And I haven't been able to be in the gym for about 8 weeks, so just building the muscle back up and getting fit again.
Well, Chris Offert asks, Annie, does anyone practice yoga and meditation on board?
That's actually a good idea. I mean, sometimes you really would like to stretch out. You don't get to move that much on board, but no, there isn't really time for that. I don't know if people meditate in their bunks, but I think pretty much once you're in your bunk, your eyes are shut and you're asleep.
Okay, and Sarah Hornby asks, which one of your teammates has got the smelliest feet? Can you be honest with us there?
Good question, Sarah. Yeah, I'm sorry, Carlo, but I'm going to have to pin this on you. I mean, I don't know if they are the smelliest, but they're just massive. And I was sharing a bunk with him on the last leg, and he would hang his boots right near where our head was, and there's just these massive, smelly boots near my face the whole time.
Maybe the other crew are bad, but it's like holding a candle to the sun at that point.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Well, that's some of the things that the sailors are having to deal with. Your bodies really do take a punishment, it's fairly safe to say. All right, well, that is pretty much it. That's all the time we've got. Thank you so much for Annie for joining us. You're going to have to head back now. You're doing a bit of a tour for Team Brunel, aren't you?
Yes, I am, in Holland.
Okay, well, fingers crossed we see you back on the boat just as soon as you're sort of recovered.
Thank you.
A quick reminder to everybody here that our competition has closed. It closed at midnight yesterday, so you can stop putting in your entries. We are not taking any more, and we're going to keep an eye on the fleet. And once that first boat has crossed the equator, then we will be announcing the winner. We are going to be back tomorrow with a quick fix and then another daily show, 1300 UTC. Hope you enjoyed Annie Lush in the studio. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
We will see you all tomorrow.